In this section, we're going to talk about self-control. There's an older gentleman who is about to undergo surgery. And as it happened, his son is the physician who is about to go and perform the surgery. And just before he goes under, he says to his son, "Remember, son, if I don't make it out of this surgery, your mother is moving in with you." What is self-control? Self-control is all about the problem between now and later. There are many problems of this nature, and they're all around us in the world. And in this section, we're going to learn both about what causes these problems and also about how to fight them. And if you start to understand what role self-control, both the self-control problems and solution, have to play with our lives, all of a sudden you would realize how much better you could get and what kind of things you could do to overcome some of the challenges in our environment. So today I want us to talk a little bit about self-control, what is the problem of self-control, and what can we do about it. So to get us thinking about self-control, I want to tell you a personal story about one of my biggest struggles with self-control. So when I was in hospital, I got some blood transfusions. And one of those blood transfusions had a liver disease within it, and I got this liver disease. And as you can imagine, it was bad enough to be a burn patient. Getting a liver disease on top of that was not something to look forward to. And at that point in time, they didn't know really what was the liver disease. They just saw my liver functions shot up, and they had to slow down treatments, rejected some transplants, all kinds of bad things that happened. But they couldn't identify what it was, and there was no treatment. A long, long time after that, I was in grad school already. I had another flare-up of my liver. I checked myself into hospital, and they told me that I had hepatitis C. By that time, they could identify the particular virus I had, so this was hepatitis C. And there was also a trial done by the FDA, or under the FDA rules, to see whether a medication called interferon was going to be effective for hepatitis C. Interferon was a medication that was originally approved for hairy cell leukemia, a really awful disease that nothing works for, but they approved interferon for that. And now the question was, would interferon also work for hepatitis C? And I asked them, what happens if I don't take the medication? What happens if I don't go on the trial? And they described to me what it might look like to die from liver cirrhosis, which is an awful way to go. So I opted for this trial. The problem was that this trial involved 3 times a week a very unpleasant medication. Now think to yourself, imagine that you had a medication in your hand and you ask yourself whether you want to inject yourself. And theoretically, if you inject yourself 3 times a week for a year and a half, you might not get liver cirrhosis in 30 years from now, but for sure you would spend the next 14 hours with side effects, headache, vomiting, shaking, stuff like that. Not as bad as liver cirrhosis, but certainly bad and now. Ask yourself whether you would be able to give yourself this medication. Now for me, this was a real decision that I faced many, many times, but for you it's hypothetical. So let's think about less hypothetical decisions. Let's think about things like, how many of you, for example, and try to be honest, have eaten in the last week more than you think you should? Raise your hand. I mean, even though you're just watching this, raise your hand and tell yourself whether you've done that. What about under-exercising? How many of you have exercised not as much as you hoped you would in the last month? How many of you procrastinated with class material, for example? How many of you have texted while driving? Another example that you can think about is how many of you have ever had unplanned, unprotected sex? Right? Now, the interesting things with all of these examples is that not only do we recognize that we have done many of them, but we also recognize that we'll keep on doing them. Procrastination, for example. Many people start the semester or start the new year by saying this time everything would be great. We take clean notebooks and we say we're going to do all the reading and all the homework, but then other things come and eventually we fall off the path. And then again next year, it's a new time and we don't learn from the past and we hope that we will do it better this time. For me, by the way, one of my current struggles is with sleep. I work until usually very late at night, and then I ask myself, what do I need to do? Should I think about my current needs, the things I really need to do right now, or the fact that I need to go to sleep? And I delay my sleep and delay my sleep and delay my sleep until eventually I don't get a good night's sleep. If you see black shadows under my eyes, you know where it's coming from. So self-control is a general problem when it's about what's exactly now and what's in the future. And the future doesn't have to be very far from now. It could be quite close, like tomorrow morning. But the current future is incredibly powerful. And we call this sometimes the present focus bias, that we focus on what is the present. This, by the way, is the Adam and Eve problem. You can ask yourself, how many of us would sacrifice eternity in Garden of Eden for an apple? Well, it turns out we do it all the time. Now, to take all of these examples and think about them together as a general class of problems between what's good now and what's good in the future, I want you to ask yourself the following question. Imagine I gave you a choice and I said, what would you rather have? A half a box of chocolate right now or a full box of chocolate in a week? And imagine the chocolate was just in front of you. And you asked, what would you rather have, half a box now or a full in the week? I'm suspecting that most of you would say, give me the half a box of chocolate right now. It's not worthwhile for me to wait another week for another half a box of chocolate. But imagine I pushed the choices to the future. And I said, what would you rather have? A half a box in a year or a full box in a year and a week? Now, of course, you realize it's the same decision. It's a decision of whether you're willing to wait another week for another half a box of chocolate. Not only that, but you recognize that in a year from now, the second decision would look just like the first one, where you could say, I could have the half a box of chocolate now, or I could wait another week. But phrased this way, and looking at it far in advance, as if it's a year from now, I'm willing to bet that all of you are willing to wait a year and a week for the full box of chocolate. You're willing to wait now another week for another half a box of chocolate. Why is that? It's because in the future we are wonderful people. We will exercise, we will diet, we will not procrastinate, we will not text and drive. All of those things would be fantastic in the future. The problem, of course, is that we never get to live in that future. We get to live in the present, and in the present we make mistakes. So now that we understand the problem of self-control, I want to go back to my story with interferon and hepatitis C. And I want to tell you what I did in this particular case. So I took the medication for a year and a half, and a year and a half later I had another biopsy. My doctor, Dr. Killenberg, told me that I cleared the disease, which was fantastic news. A little while later, the FDA approved interferon for hepatitis C, which was also a good news. And finally, he told me that I was the only patient in this protocol that took their medication regularly. Now you might ask yourself, how could I take it? How could I be the only patient in this very large protocol who took their medication regularly? Is it because I care more about my future? I care more about my liver? I have less problems with immediate temptation? The answer is no to all of those. The answer is that I invented a little trick for myself. And my trick was based on the idea that I love movies. If I had time, I would watch lots and lots of movies. Sadly, I don't have much time, so I don't watch that many movies. But on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which were injection days for me, on the way to school, I would first stop in a video store. I would rent some videos I really wanted to watch, and I would carry them in my backpack the whole day. I would get home in the evening, I would look at the videos, I would put one in, I would inject myself, and I would press play. I did not wait for the side effects to start. Instead, what I did is I connected the movies that I wanted to see with the injection, which was something that I didn't want to see. I would press play, I would take a bucket and a blanket for the side effect, and I would start a night of watching movies, and then of course the side effect would start and the evening did not end up being so good. Now, if you think about it, there's a couple of strange things about this story. The first thing is that if we made a list of what's important in life, livers would be up there. Really, really important. We have only one. Side effects and injections, much, much less important. And if you thought about it this way, you should think that me and all the other patients should have taken our medication all the time. But of course, this is not how we think about it. The effect of the liver is dramatically discounted because we also have the time component. The liver is not, we're not going to get sick now. It might happen in 30 years from now. And because of this, the effect of the liver is largely discounted, and the effect of the injection looks much, much larger because it is in the present. That's the first part. The second part is that if you think about my solution, the movie solution, it's kind of a strange idea. That solution did not involve anything with the word livers, or it did not involve anything about caring more about the liver. It had a little equation that says movies for injection, or injection for movies. And we call this reward substitution. And the idea with reward substitution is that there are some things in life that are too much in the future, and we're very unlikely to care about them for the right reason. But we don't have to give up. Instead, what we could do is we could say, let us take other things, other rewards that are going to be present in our immediate environment, and by acting toward these rewards, we can behave as if we care about our livers. So think about it. What are things in life in which we're just not designed to care about the final goal for the right reason? And are there shortcuts? Are there ways to care about something else that would get us to behave as if we care about the final goal? So let us think together about a couple of examples like this. The first example I want you to think about is global warming. Global warming is very far in the future, and you can ask yourself whether people can wake up in the morning and feel energized to care about global warming. Now, I don't know what you personally think about global warming. Let's not worry about it for now. Let's just assume that global warming is a real problem, and let's think about whether under those conditions people can either care. The answer is probably not. It's probably going to be incredibly tough. In fact, if you took this problem and looked at it from the other way, and you said, let's create a problem that would maximize human apathy, you would probably come up with global warming. Why? Because global warming is far in the future, would happen to other people first. We don't see it progressing. We don't see any particular person suffering, and anything we would do as individual is a drop in the bucket. Under those 5 forces of empathy, can we care? Very, very unlikely. It's almost like a perfect storm of apathy. So what can we do? If people are not going to care for the right reason, can we create other things that would get people to behave as if they care? So now the challenge for us is to think about all the things that could motivate human beings and which one of them we could tie in a reward substitution way to global warming. So you can say, why don't we pay people, right? You can either pay people or tax them to behave well. That's one approach. Another approach could be, let's make it more easy, more convenient. That's another way. You could also think about something like reputation or prestige, or making something look cool. You can think about giving people points, or making them feel that they're making some progress something. Gamers, by the way, really understand reward substitutions. Gamers want you to work for them for a long time playing their games with no money whatsoever. So they have to think about all kinds of ways to get people to motivate without paying them. And they come up with lots of ways. For example, having a leaderboard that tells you how you are compared to other people. Here is one example to think about in this case. In the US, when the Toyota Prius came, which is a hybrid car, there was another car by Honda that was also a hybrid. And the Toyota Prius did very well, and the Honda didn't do that well. And there could be all kinds of reasons, but I think that one of them was the Toyota Prius looked so different from the other cars. Now think about it. If you're driving your Toyota Prius, you could tell to yourself, look at me, I'm a wonderful, kind human being. I'm driving a hybrid car. If you're driving the Honda, you could do the same thing. But if you're driving the Prius, you can also tell yourself that other people, the people around you, are noticing how different your car looks like. They realize what a wonderful, kind human being you are, and you get to bask in the reflected glory of the people who drive around you? Could it be that the fact that the Toyota Prius created an external signal to communicate to other people what wonderful people we are, the Prius driving people, created an extra benefit for those people and therefore got them to behave well? Now, this is not a great scientific study. It's actually not even a good scientific study. But I went to my friends, and I have some Toyota Prius driving friends and some non-Toyota Prius driving friends, and I asked them all, what else have they done for energy conservation? Changing light bulbs, high efficiency appliances, changing the insulation in the attic, changing what temperature they keep the house in. And you know what? These two groups of my friends, maybe just about my friends, are no different. They are different on the Toyota Prius. They are no different on anything else. Now, you can make fun, of course, of the people who drive Toyota Prius, but I think the real issue is that Toyota Prius gave people another benefit, and that benefit made people be willing to invest money in that particular approach of energy conservation. What would happen if we had the same ability to convey to other people who we are, for example, by getting people to know what temperature we set our thermostat to, or how much insulation we have in our attic? Imagine that your Facebook profile included those elements. Could you all of a sudden care in a public signaling way about those elements as well? I think there is a potential. So this was the first example of how we can think about reward substitution in the domain of caring about the world.